Within the first episode of this show, the main characters turn a man into red mist, get jumped and deformed into insects, and de-glove a 12-year-old's face. And the most horrific thing about all of this is that this is somehow one of the best written anime that I've ever seen. Sorcerers are a race almost identical to humans, except that their bodies contain an extra set of organs which produce a magical smoke. Seeing themselves as above humanity, these magic users live in a separate society centered around worshipping godlike creatures called devils. Here, a person's worth is determined by two things: how rare the type of magic they specialize in is, and more importantly, how much smoke their body can produce. Weak sorcerers live in poverty and resort to forming gangs and enhancing their smoke production synthetically through drug use or surgery, while strong ones can make a living off of just selling their excess smoke and can even train to become devils themselves. This place is creatively called the Magic User World. This also isn't where most of the show takes place. See, when someone uses magic, the smoke that they leave behind doesn't just disappear. The remaining residue mixes in with rain and falls down to where the humans live, a massive rundown industrial city called the Hull. This world building is what makes the show immediately stand out. At the beginning, everything seems a little off. The sorcerers walk around ominously in these grotesque masks. The humans commonly have deformities that dehumanize them. The setting's unfamiliar, almost to the point of uncomfortability. It really feels like you stepped into a place where you don't belong. But then, as you spend time in this strange world and start figuring out some of its mysteries, you begin to notice how the two places have developed alongside each other. In the Hull, humans are constantly on edge and hostile because they're paranoid that someone among them could secretly be a sorcerer. There's this mass fear of the magic users and belief that they're the cause of all the Hull's problems. While in the magic user world, the sorcerers are so set on this idea that humans are beneath them that the thought of one secretly living there doesn't even cross their minds. They see humans as nothing but animals and freely experiment on them with no empathy whatsoever. The way the two places manage to keep their own identities while also revealing information about one another makes it easy to believe that the world's been lived in outside of the 12 episodes you watch, which then makes not knowing things about it feel completely natural. With this curiosity, the show becomes less about just sitting there and waiting for the plot to move forward and more about existing in a place that's new to you. Speaking of which, this video was made in partnership with NordVPN. Since moving into my college dorm, I've kind of been forced to learn about internet security. From connecting my laptop to public Wi-Fi networks, to getting malicious AI-generated emails sent to my school inbox, to sharing files with questionable classmates. My personal information's been fighting for its life all semester. Just this week, someone's been signing into my Spotify and listening to nothing but country music. So I know firsthand the horrors of being digitally compromised. My recommended songs are never gonna be good again. This is where Nord comes in. Their goal is to make your time on the internet as painless as possible by providing you with tools like a kill switch to make sure your VPN's always on before accessing the internet, dedicated IP to stop websites from noticing that you're using a VPN and then spamming you with human verification checks, and a no logs policy so you know that your data isn't being retained by your VPN provider. This is in addition to the usual VPN functions like anonymizing your internet traffic and changing your location to almost anywhere in the world. So if any of this interests you, Nord's given me an exclusive code which you can use to get 4 months for free when signing up for a 2-year plan. This includes a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can decide if the service is right for you. You can get this deal by using my unique code at nordvpn.com/nobones. Something I realized after reading a certain manga is that a cool world means absolutely nothing if there aren't interesting characters that can take advantage of it. The feeling I got reading this 5 out of 10 slideshow of laptop backgrounds was indescribable. If you told me that ChatGPT wrote the entire story, I would believe it in a heartbeat. Within a week of reading it, I forgot 90% of what happened and the names of all the characters, except genitalias. The point of mentioning that failed video idea is that an interesting setting doesn't make a good story. Whereas Blam uses its world as a crutch, distracting you with cool architecture and character design from realizing that the author's kinda just making shit up as he goes, Dorohedoro takes complete advantage of its setting. See, the show's a bit slow to get going. Near the start, there are entire sections where not much happens except for the characters going about their day-to-day. Usually, this would be awful. There's a whole genre for this type of stuff, which I stay away from like my life depends on it. But in this case, it works really well. For 2 reasons. The first is the interesting setting that balances balances out the monotony of watching characters do absolutely fucking nothing, and the second is the people that populate it. The characters in this show are overwhelmingly likable. They're all objectively horrible people, but they're so charming that despite their very obvious flaws, they still manage to completely win you over. If you really dumb the plot down, the story's about people going around and murdering each other solely because they're different races, which is obviously a bad thing. This isn't that kind of anime YouTube channel. But because the characters have a couple funny moments, you completely excuse their questionable morals and spend the entire series just vibing out with them. This is further hammered in by the fact that while the show has a group of villains, by the third episode, you don't know who to root for anymore, because no matter which group's perspective you're watching, you're having fun. The only time the weird character dynamic even crosses your mind is when the two groups run into each other and you're stuck trying to figure out who the lesser of two evils is. These moments might seem insignificant, but really their purpose is to snap you straight out of the lighthearted, goofy trance you were trapped in and remind you that the characters who you've grown to care about aren't safe from the brutality of their world. Now, I'd be lying if I said that some of the sudden tone changes didn't give me whiplash, but the anime plays around with its genres so loosely that at a certain point they all start to feed off of each other and become inseparable. The horror acts as the backbone for everything, creating the gritty, depraved personality of the world. The comedy keeps the show from feeling like it was written by a depressed 14-year-old by giving the story enough breathing room to humanize its characters. And the drama stops the comedy from destroying all sense of risk and reaffirms that the characters are just people making the most out of their awful situations. It's through this act of tiptoeing the line between being a stroke of writing genius and complete schizophrenic garbage that the show manages to make you care about this cast of psychotic freaks. From a man cursed with a lizard head and a single-digit IQ, to a pair of sexually frustrated mafia hitmen, to a twink on a revenge quest who somehow wasn't the main character. No matter how weird they were, each person gave you a reason to empathize with them. Even seemingly unimportant side characters were given a certain amount of depth and a purpose for existing outside of just supporting the main cast. You can tell there was a lot of love put into this show, just based on the amount of unnecessary shit that the production team paid for. Does a 12-episode show really need 6 different endings? No. But as someone who also puts an obsessive amount of effort into things that people don't pay attention to, it warmed my heart a little seeing them set a bunch of money on fire trying to make the show memorable. And it was, but mostly because the source material for it is insane. If the Dorohedoro show is an 8, the manga's a 10. Nearly every single flaw that the story has is exclusive to its anime. One of the biggest differences is in the way things look. The manga has this grimy, hyper-detailed style to it that looks straight out of an edgy skateboarding magazine. I could 100% imagine some dude wearing this on a hoodie and asking if I have a vape on me. The problem with this incredible art style is that it would wipe out an entire animation studio by the second episode. And so instead of the messy, intricate designs of the manga, the characters in the anime have this clean look to them that makes them feel out of place. This is most evident in the main duo. Kaiman goes from sharp and intimidating to plasticky and soulless, and Nikaido goes from unkempt and free-flowing to looking like Naruto on estrogen. They also took some creative liberties with the story, toning down gore, tweaking the dialogue, and even removing entire plot points. But for the most part, the show was very faithful to the manga. So much so that if you pay attention while watching, you can notice 3 distinct cuts in each episode that represent the manga chapters changing. You'd think this would be jarring, but the story switches between the different characters' perspectives so often that I didn't even notice anything was off until I started reading the manga alongside the show. That being said, none of the previous changes compared to the single biggest flaw with the anime. There wasn't enough of it. Plot-wise, the story's extremely backloaded. The first half is spent getting you invested in the characters and their world. So right as you've started getting comfortable in this strange place, right as you've found a couple of people to root for, stuff actually starts happening. The conflict suddenly has lasting consequences. Major secrets planted from the beginning of the show are finally getting addressed. This feels like where the real story starts. And then it gets taken out back and shot because the anime's only 12 episodes long. Yeah, it's been 3 years since the first season of this show came out, and then the animation studio went to go work on Attack on Titan, so they're probably pretty busy reading death threats right now. With the second season in limbo, you might be wondering, what was the point of this video? What was the point of me sitting here and selling you on a show that might never fully be animated? Indoctrination, go read the manga.